Hey everybody, today I'm doing something a little bit different. Today I'm going to be ranking every album that came out this year that I listened to in 2021. A couple of things before we get started. One, this is all just my opinion. I thought this year was amazing for music and there were so many good albums that came out, and I just kind of felt the need to rank them all and just the order from worst to best kinda, but also just from my personal taste. Two, as I just said, this is from my personal taste. So that means there are a lot of albums that didn't make it on here or just I didn't listen to this year. I'm sorry about that. This is just kind of a list based off of what I listened to and what albums I decided to listen to this year. If there's any albums I leave off of this list that you think I should listen to, please let me know, because I know there was so much good music and I know I missed a lot, but this is just what I got to. Three, this is just how I feel right now. Opinions change, taste change, I don't know. This is just how I feel right now, so maybe in a year it'll be different, but I'm just going off of what I have right now. We have a lot of albums to get through, so let's just get started. Let's start off with the worst.
Notes. I really wish I had the notes. I'm pretty sure there's something good that I wrote.
Alright, so look at the titles of all these songs. Do I have to say anything else?
I met her buying iced tea at the corner mini mart. She was thirsty.
Okay, so I feel like some people are gonna disagree with me on this one, but man, like, no. No. I just can't stand this Weezer album. All of the Good Ones is literally Beverly Hills Part 2. It's 3 chords the entire song. Blue Dream is literally Crazy Train, but in a different key with a different melody. Even if that's the point, it's not interesting, new, or exciting in any way to me. The lyrics to One More Hit are actually so weird and I hate it. Same with I Need Some of That. I guess Precious Metal Girl is okay. Another problem I have with this album is the production. Sometimes the silky smooth, squeaky clean production works, but I think for this album it just, with Rivers Cuomo's voice, I don't like it. I'm not here for it. So yeah, I'm just not feeling this Weezer album. And I honestly think it's one of their worst albums, and that's saying a lot considering how many shitty albums they've came out with. So yeah, that's just how I feel about it. Alright, next up we got The Revenge of Hobo Johnson. It's not much better than the album I just talked about. These albums by Hobo Johnson just feel like him giving up. His singing on this album is so obnoxious and annoying. The songs do nothing interesting, and the production is nothing special either. The lyrics are garbage. Jordan's house. Jordan's house. Yeah, no, absolutely not. I know some of you are probably thinking, why would you listen to this album over Van Weezer? And to that I say, this album at least is kind of stupid to the point to where it's like a smidge enjoyable, but that's not saying a lot. That's absolutely not saying a lot. But Van Weezer is honestly just grating to my ears, so it's hard to listen to that. But yeah, that's how I feel about it. Moving on.
That bright infinity inside your eyes.
Alright, so next we got Coldplay. Now, I have mixed feelings about Coldplay overall. I honestly really like their earlier work. Parachutes and A Rush of Blood to the Head are both really good albums in my eyes, and I also grew up with them, and I just have a soft spot for them. And then after maybe their 4th album is when things really started to get shaky. Milo Xyloto wasn't really that good. I don't actually hate Ghost Stories, but still. A Head Full of Dreams kind of sucks. Everyday Life was okay, I guess. And now we're here at Music of the Spheres. I honestly think this might be Coldplay's worst album. It just... why? Like, what? You're coming over here with a BTS collab? In the beginning, I didn't honestly expect the worst because I thought Higher Power was decent and Coloratura was pretty cool for being a really long song. But man, the rest of the album does not even get anywhere close to those first 2 tracks. Beautiful That song, oh my god, I cannot stand that song at all. What were they thinking with that song? They're also using emojis for songs on this album. You got heart emoji, which is kind of cool, I guess, but still doesn't really do much for me. My Universe is terrible. I'm sorry. I hate that song. I cannot stand it. Humankind is also pretty bad. Same with Let Somebody Go. It just doesn't work. Like, I don't feel it at all. I think the production is so overblown and just unnecessary. It gets to Imagine Dragons level of, like, a stupid amount of compression and just stupid drops. Like, I don't like it. It's just, that's how I feel about it. But yeah, moving on. Next up is 21 Pilots, who, honestly, I get why people like 21 Pilots, and I get that people have a lot of emotional attachment to their albums and stuff like that, but I am not feeling a lot of their discography, really. The one album I do like by 21 Pilots quite a bit is Trench. I feel like that's kind of agreed upon throughout a lot of the people who have stumbled across their music, but nothing else really in their catalog I would really ever come back to. While not everything is terrible, I think that a lot of the stuff on here is just really generic and uninteresting. I know there's a whole lore thing behind this album, and I don't get it, really. I know that it's a huge part of their deal, but to me, I just don't want to invest the time to go and read hours upon hours of just random 21 Pilots lore, because I'm not that big of a fan of them. When it's a sound that I don't care for, it's hard for me to care about the lore going past that, you know? The two songs I don't hate are The Outside and Shy Away. I think they're fine. They're not the best, but they're fine. But yeah, that's my consensus on that. Next up, we got Foo Fighters. I've kind of always loved Foo Fighters, or at least had a soft spot for some of their music. A lot of their early albums are good. Some of their stuff is kind of boring in the middle of their career, but Wasting Light is really good, and that came out in, I think, 2011 or 12, something like that. But this new album is just not for me. It's not all terrible, and it's not the worst thing ever, but I just think that a lot of their new directions didn't really pay off. I just think that some of these songs get so repetitive and boring at a certain point and just generic to the point to where I don't really care. And yeah, they do try new things on this album, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I am the biggest fan of it. No songs on this album I'd really come back to because they all just kind of blend together in a way. The lead single, Shame Shame, is just really repetitive to me, even though it's not the worst thing ever. It's just kind of repetitive and bland. No Son of Mine is energetic, but it doesn't really do much outside of that. I don't know, that's just my opinion on how I feel about it, but new Foo Fighters album is just painfully average. Alright, next up we got Modest Mouse. I did not think I'd be putting Modest Mouse this low. Their new album, though, is just kinda okay at best. It's not bad. There's nothing on here that makes me want to, like, drown my head in a pool, like with Hobo Johnson. But a lot of the songs here just don't really leave an impression on me. With acclaimed albums like Good News for People Who Love Bad News, The Moon in Antarctica, and Lonesome Crowded West, this album just does not stand up to any of those. The lead single, We Are Between, I didn't originally hate that much. It wasn't anything crazy, but I thought it was decent. But then you got songs like Leave a Light On and The Sun Hasn't Left, which are just so eh. Overall, it's just fine. Not terrible, not great, just right down in the middle. Next up, we got Death From Above, 1979. Death From Above is a band I like a lot of stuff from. I honestly think The Physical World and Outrage Is Now are both pretty solid albums. They have this like dance punky rock sort of sound that just is fun and really enjoyable to listen to. This album, while it's not bad, it's another one of those albums that's like painfully average. When compared to their other works, it's like, yeah, okay, I don't know what's going on here. They're a two-piece, and it's impressive that they can make this much sound with just being a two-piece. But this album, I think, suffers the most with the production. It is so overblown, and it's really hit or miss. The tracks I do think the production works the best with is Modern Guy and the lead single 1+1. Free Animal is also pretty cool. But man, the rest of the songs here I do not care for, and a lot of it is because of the production and just the songwriting doesn't feel as top-notch as it was on some of their early work. I don't think any of it is absolutely terrible, it's just nothing I'd really come back to except for a couple of the tracks I mentioned that were pretty good. It all averages out to just be okay though, as a whole experience.
Put your dreams on ice, never thinking twice.
Okay, so we got this Killers album. The Killers is a band I've always really liked. At least Hot Fuss, I've really liked that album. I haven't been keeping up with what they've been doing, but since I'm trying to listen to more of the newer releases, this came across my radar, and I was like, you know what, well, let's give it a listen. The Killers, I think, with their sound, there's only so much you can do with it, and that kind of shows on this album. I know generally people enjoy this release, but for me, it was just kind of meat and potatoes for a Killers album. None of it's bad, none of it's absolutely amazing to me, but it's just kind of fine. I thought the best song in here was In Another Life, which is just a good song, but the rest I just do not care for. Even the Phoebe Bridgers feature I thought I would enjoy, but to me it just sounds really generic, especially compared to how good Phoebe Bridgers can get. So yeah, just kind of okay. Viagra Boys, I hadn't really heard of too much, but they've kind of fallen into the post-punk category, which is a genre I'm a big fan of. And I heard a couple of their earlier songs, and they were pretty good. So I was like, okay, let's check it out. This album is so mixed for me. The opener to the album, Ain't Nice, is pretty good, and it feels like a solid Viagra Boys song. But then you got the closer, In Spite of Ourselves, which I think is honestly terrible. I cannot stand the vocals. It's just so generic and boring to me. And that's just kind of the whole album in a sum. There are some pretty solid tracks, but there are also some just like, why is this here tracks. Again, overall it's not terrible, but just when you could combine that, that's just kind of averaging as being eh. I did enjoy Creatures though, and Ain't Nice like I mentioned. Those are solid songs. But yeah, overall, that's just kind of how I feel. Okay, so this next one was a pretty big one. I know a lot of people were anticipating this album. The best thing I can say about this album is that at least it has some summer jams in it. I think the title track is a pretty good song, and it's enjoyable to me. The rest of the album, though, is just like meat and potatoes, okay. There's just not too much that's interesting that goes on, besides a couple catchy moments, but really it's just overall just kind of bland. But just on a first impression with this album, it really didn't do much for me. Next up, we got Sympathy for Life. This band is a band I haven't heard too much from, aside from a couple songs off of Sunbathing Animal, and I know they have Wide Awake, which is an acclaimed album from them, and a lot of people love it, so I need to give that a listen. But nothing on this album really impressed me too much. I think that just compared to what I've heard from them, and what a lot of other people seem to agree upon, they usually have a pretty unique, energetic, fun sound. But this album, it feels like everything's just dulled down a little bit. I think a big problem and a reason for that is the production. It feels so bland, and it just doesn't help these songs or give them the energy that they need. Maybe that's also just a choice with the performances and the tone that they put on like the guitars. But man, it's just really not giving me that full force energy or just any catchy, relatable nature to some of the other stuff I've heard from Parquet Courts. At least from Sunbathing Animal. So we'll see what they bring in the future, but for now, this album is just kind of... Okay, we got a second Weezer album from this year. What is going on with the lighting? Ignore this random streak of light that's coming down like I'm coming out of the heavens. Out of the two Weezer albums that came out this year, this one's definitely the better one. Here, they came through with a decent album. Nothing absolutely crazy about it, but at least it's better than some of the other releases this year. And especially better than Van Weezer, oh my god. They got a little bit more instrumentally lush and pretty with this album, which I can appreciate. I'm still not the biggest fan of Rivers' voice, just with their most recent output. I don't know what happened, but it just sounds so grating to me and squeaky clean to the point where it's just like, ah. But even with that, this album has some good songs. I think Numbers is the best song on the album. I think it's the most emotionally potent and one of the most just well-written songs I've heard Weezer write in a long while. I think Grapes of Wrath is also a pretty fun song. They also sponsor Audible. Most of the other songs on the album are just kind of hit or miss, though. And by hit, I mean, like, decent. And by miss, I mean, eh. I still do think the orchestration is cool, and that's why it gets a few more extra points just overall. At least it stays kind of consistent within its sound. But yeah, it's just kind of a decent album. It's nothing I'm really going to come back to, maybe besides Numbers, but still, even then, it's like, not terrible, but just, it's fine. This album kind of fits into the dad rock category. I thought the two-piece bass idea was kind of fun. Songs like I Only Lie When I Love You and How Did It Get So Dark, those songs are so good. But this album isn't really anything special. This is Car Commercial, the album. That being said, there are a couple of good songs. I think that Boilermaker is fantastic, and the fact that Josh Homme produced that song is really cool. I also thought the piano ballad as the closer was kind of cool. Oblivion is also a pretty solid track. But yeah, besides that, it's like some pretty decent songs, but some songs that are just car commercial-itis. So yeah. Next up, we got It Won't Always Be Like This by Inhaler. I honestly don't have too much to say about this album besides the fact that it's decent. The title track is pretty good, and I think the overall catchy indie rock sound that they're trying to go for it's cool, but it's kind of generic, and it feels like it could have been a part of the 2000s with bands like Jet. But it's overall fine. There's nothing really too great or too bad about it. So this album, I think, does a couple really good things, but there's some stuff that holds it back. I think that the whole feeling and vibe of the album is really cool. I think this album suffers from some kind of generic songwriting tricks, though. Even then, it's still good, and I can totally get why people enjoyed this album and could just vibe to it. My favorite song is the title track, which I think just has a really cool soundscape and atmosphere to it, and also has just a good melody. I also enjoy the final song on here, which is kind of unexpected since it's just an ambient track. But keeping in mind the whole feeling of the album and the idea of like traveling through a forest or walking and hiking, I think that the song is really great for that feeling and that vibe. So I will give it that for sure. But yeah, overall it's still decent, and I think that it has some stuff going for it, but there's just other stuff that holds it back a little bit more. Alright, we get to the good albums. From now on, these albums are good to great, which we will get to. This album is just overall good, though. If you haven't heard of Strawberry Guy, he's this kind of chill indie artist. His EP, Taking My Time to Be, I thought was pretty good and had some good indie songs on it. His debut album is just that. Sun Outside My Window is just a good atmosphere, a good vibe, a good feeling, a lot of really chill and just nice tracks. I think that this album's problem is the fact that it doesn't vary around too much, and that's why it's not higher. But I will say the production is absolutely gorgeous on this album, and it really shines through on that front. The final track, A White Lie, I think is my favorite song on the album, just because it's a little bit more expansive and develops on a more interesting idea. The rest of the album is fine to decent. So if you want a more chill, relaxed album to listen to, maybe when you're falling asleep or just walking through a forest, I don't know, I can see this album being there for you in that situation.
It's not that I crave any more company.
Next up, we got Sing by Clairo. I've heard about Clairo before, and I know she's a pretty well-respected indie artist, I think, but I haven't really heard much from her. This is my first full album experience with her, and it was pretty good. Nothing mind-blowing, but it was just nice. I think the opener Bambi is really nice, and I actually come back to that one a good amount. The three tracks after that as well are pretty good. Then the album takes a little bit of a dip in quality, but then it goes back up towards the end, so I really don't have too much else to say about this album. I just think that it's pretty solid. I think that the best thing that this album shows us is that Clairo has a lot of potential with really good singing and really nice production as well. And I feel like this album could be a bridge to something even greater. So I'm excited to see what else Clairo does in the future. Man, we still have a lot of albums to go. There's a lot of albums in the 70s threshold. Next up here we got Courtney Barnett with Things Take Time, Take Time. From what I've heard, people were kind of so-and-so on this album. I honestly enjoyed it quite a bit though. Yeah, it's definitely not her best work though overall, but I still find a lot to enjoy about it. I'm kind of a fan of just that simple, nice indie rock, even when it can be generic sometimes, and I'll talk about that with this album because that is a problem here. But I think there are enough catchy songs that do a good job at being catchy to keep me interested. Here's the Thing is my favorite song on the album, and I just love the chorus and the vocal melody and the lyrics. It all just has a very honest and open feeling to it. I also really like the lyrics. Also, that's another thing I like about this album, the lyrics. I think that the lyrics are kind of tongue-in-cheek and fun. Ray Street is a good opener, and Sunfair Sundown is also a really nice song. So yeah, it's nothing absolutely crazy, and I get why people are kind of so-and-so on it, but I personally think there are a few tracks that I will definitely be coming back to.
Let me to the floor, even though I'm not a dancer. Ask me all the questions that you're.
Next up, we got Lucy Dacus. Never heard of her before, but I'm glad I checked this album out. Once again, it's just another solid album. Triple Dog Dare is an amazing closer. I love that song. Absolutely fantastic. I also think Hot and Heavy is a great opener. The rest of the album I don't come back to that much, really, but I still think that it has a good vibe and feeling overall, and the performances and singing is great. Just another solid indie rock album.
Little dear, the arrow hopes to fly to you.
Okay, this one might have a little bit of controversy to it. The Turning Wheel is a album that a lot of people really enjoyed this year. And I do definitely enjoy it, but I do not think that it's quite as amazing as some people make it out to be. Fantano. I do think that the vocals are really cool, and I think that a lot of the production and performances are really nice. But man, something's missing. At least for me personally. I think that the songwriting overall was just kind of fine, at least with a handful of tracks. I will say Sweet Talk and Boys at School are both really, really great songs. Especially Boys at School. I think that song has a really cool progression and some really awesome instrumentation. But other songs like the title track, The Future, and Legacy don't really do too much for me. Just me personally. I do get why people like the album a lot, and I still enjoy it, but just, I don't think it is quite to the level that people are hyping it up to me.
Before we found ourselves beneath the waves.
Next up we got Low with the album Hey What. Low is a band I've heard of because of the slowcore genre, which I'm a pretty big fan of. I haven't listened to much of their stuff though. And overall this album's pretty decent. I think the song Hey is my favorite on here, just because of its more drawn out songwriting style and some of the more ambient side of things, at least with like some of the synth and stuff. The one thing that does make this album a little more mixed for me, even though I overall still think it's good, is the production. The production can be really cool at some times, but also really weird at other times. But yeah, even then I still enjoy a handful of tracks on it, like Hey and also All Night. I think that's another good song. But yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. Next up, we got King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. Their second half to their double album kinda came out early this year. It's just LW. There was KG, and now there's LW. This album's pretty good. They really mastered some of their microtonal stuff on Flying Microtonal Banana. But some of it here and on that KG release was also just kind of, so it's fun. But this album's good. I think it's better than KG. I think my favorite song on here is the title track, KGLW. It shows a really cool riff and a great style for their heavier stuff. With the album Infest the Rat's Nest, it's kind of hard to live up to that level because that album I thought was really, really good. But this song kind of reminisces a little bit of what that was going for, and it's still really cool, I think. I think the main riff slaps. Another song I really like is One. I think it has a great melody, great progression, and it just is a great song. The rest of the album is pretty decent, and I think the opener is kind of weird, but it's overall still a pretty solid album. Next up, we got Amy and the Sniffers, or Amo and the Sniffers. This is another album where I don't really have too much to say about it besides the fact that it's just pretty good. I like the raw aggression, I like the punky sort of sound it's going for, even though the production and the performances are pretty, generic within the punk genre. I think that overall it still has a good time, and I think the vocalist is really eccentric, and I think that's why it makes these songs a little bit more interesting and likable. Has a ton of energy as well, so it's just solid.
I was lying in my bed, a creature.
I Don't Live Here Anymore was an album that I was actually kind of anticipating because I do like the War on Drugs. I Don't Live in Here Anymore I think is kind of a more okay to decent side of the War on Drugs. It's definitely not bad. I mean, it has the score of 72, so it's good, but just not as great as some of their other stuff. Even that, with that being said, it's the War on Drugs. You're gonna like something about it, The great thing about the War on Drugs is that they write really just nostalgic indie rock songs. Old Skin, the title track, and Living Proof. I think those are all really great songs. But out of their catalog, this might be my least favorite. I don't know. I'd have to go back and listen to some of their earlier albums. But just compared to what they've done, I know they can do better. Still a good album, though. Next up, we got Dark Side, a band that I literally have never heard of or knew anything about before listening to this album. I just saw some people talking about it, so I just thought I'd give it a listen. And it's good. I think that their more Pink Floyd-y art rock sort of deal works. Only Young is a really great song and a really great closer. I think Liberty Bell is also a favorite on here and probably the one I come back to the most. The Limit and Lawmaker are also really great songs. It does a great job at being atmospheric, but also having a good side to that art rock feel. It's not necessarily all art rock, but it's still good in that sense. So yeah, solid.
So how'd you wanna erase me?
Valentine, Snail Mail. I love Snail Mail. Snail Mail is great. Lush is a great album. I was excited for this album. The first thing I will say is I don't think it quite reaches the same level as Lush, because I just think that album is fantastic, and I think it's one of the better indie rock albums that I've heard. But it still has a lot of good things going for it. She ups the production and use of synths on this album, for sure. Part of me likes that more simplistic production for this style of music, though, because even with that simplistic production, the songwriting is shown through, and I think it fit the genre more. Here you got a little bit more uptight production, which kind of takes away a little bit from that sound I was talking about, but still it works. I thought the lead single, Valentine, is really good, and it originally was kind of okay for me, but it grew on me. I like the groovy sort of feel to Ben Franklin a lot. But yeah, overall, it's a solid album for sure. I don't think it's quite to the level of Lush, just for me, but I did enjoy it quite a bit, and yeah, it's a good album.
All my company's full, told them to keep the loan. I sent the go bitch home, niggas was big mad.
Tyler, the Creator. Pretty big name.
First off, oh my God, can you let me do what I need to do?
This year is the year I got into Tyler, the Creator. Hip-hop is still a genre I'm still trying to explore a little bit more, but I mean, this is a solid-ass album. The thing that instantly got me hooked with this album, or at least excited for it to come out, was Lumberjack. I heard that song and I was like, holy shit, the smoothest flow ever is coming out of this guy's mouth. I thought it was awesome. So I was like, okay, I totally get this vibe, and I'm excited to see what the full album entails. Songs like Juggernaut go so hard. Even with me not being a big fan of Pharrell, I thought his feature on that track was the shit. Massa is another really great track. Corso is great. Rise is great. I think this is a really solid album from Tyler, and it definitely got me more interested in the genre and just his other albums. I just thought it was a good hip-hop record, and I definitely am a fan of him now. Next up, we got The Dad Rock Band. You thought you knew dad rock bands? Well, here's the dad rock band. It's the dad rock band because it is the dad rock band that influenced all of the dad rock bands. But it's still really good. Failure is a band that I feel like a lot of people don't talk about as much, and I'm here to talk about it because Failure has honestly a great output. They started in the 90s, and they had this really spacey, atmospheric, and also heavy sound. Fantastic Planet is an amazing album. I highly recommend it if you haven't heard it. The new release, though, is an album that I think is kind of their weakest. Still very good, but I think that in terms of their sound, this doesn't really do anything too crazy different from the other Failure albums. Usually with Failure, they change up their sound quite a bit, at least stylistically. I think Submarines is the best song on this album, and it goes so hard. That main riff is awesome. A Lifetime of Joy is also the track before it, and I think it does a really great job of transitioning into that song. Also, the album closes really strong. It's just a solid album, though. It's hard to really get a bad Failure album, in my opinion. I think they just have a really great and consistent sound, but yeah, it's just solid.
Big plants, just like a slow trance, look like a strange dance. Do you remember?
Another artist that I've never heard anything about, but this is good. I'd say this album is more art pop oriented, and I think that it does a great job at embracing that and also keeping it very interesting with the amount of unique sounds and just production tricks that they throw in here. The title track Animal is really good, and I think it's super catchy, but also keeps it interesting. I think that I love the lead synth line, and I love the singing as well. Gamma Rays is also a really solid track. Phantom Limb is an awesome closer. Just another good album, and I do really enjoy it.
That's a real big wig for such a small dog.
Next up here we got Good Morning. I really love this band. I really do. Good Morning is an indie, I wouldn't even say indie rock. I mean, some of it is, but just an indie band that I really fell in love with. They have such a great sound, and their lo-fi style and singing and everything just really clicks with me, and I think it works a lot. And this album really impressed me, honestly. I think it's one of their most consistent albums. I heard the singles coming before it, and I was really excited for it, and it dropped, and I'm like, yeah. I just had a really good time with this album, and I think that even though it's not, like, perfect or anything, it just has a lot of really great songs on it that just put you in a really great vibe. Big Wig, Small Dog, I think is my favorite song on here, and I think that the lyrics are honestly really funny, but it also has an amount of seriousness to it that makes it more enjoyable as well. Now thinking about it, I think my favorite song on the album is the first track. It's called Too Young to Quit. Absolutely beautiful song, and it really hits you in the core. The song Burning, which is another single, is also really great, and it has a nice piano in it and just chord progression. If you like indie, give this album a listen, and this band. I think that this band deserves way more recognition just because they have a great sound, and I hope more people find out about them because I really love their stuff.
Try not to abuse your power.
This one was a huge one this year. Everyone was freaking out about this album and talking about it. I honestly was pretty impressed with this thing. Billie Eilish, I kind of was mixed on in the past, and I didn't really know how to feel just because I don't know if that was my kind of music. But this album really shows her diversity with her sound, and it also kind of just shows she's not a one-trick pony. I think that there was a ton of improvement from what I had heard to this album. The song Billy Bossa Nova is actually one of my favorites on here. It's so simple but catchy and like groovy, and it just has a feel to it. The song Your Power is beautiful in my opinion. I think it has a great vocal line, and just the song Happier Than Ever is a song that I feel a lot of people agree on that it's really good. I do think it's good. I don't think it's the best song on the album, but I do enjoy it. My Future is also a really beautiful song. I just think that her songwriting matured to this album, and it clicked with me a little bit more, and I do appreciate that, and I can say that this is actually a really great album. Next we got Damon Albarn. I love Damon Albarn. I love everything he's done. Blur is great. Gorillaz are fantastic. And he released a really underrated solo album. Finally, we got a second solo album from him. And I think he did a great job with it. Even with him getting older and him dabbling into a lot of different styles, this really has a consistent and honestly beautiful sound. I love the atmosphere to this album. I think that's one of its biggest strengths. It has such a great feeling to it. Even with more melancholic songs, I think that it has a really nice just feeling. Darkness to Light is beautiful and just really catchy and well written. Daft Waiter is also really cool. The title track is really beautiful as well, just with the amount of subtlety to it. Royal Morning Blue is another favorite. I love Polaris. I think that this album is a bit underrated, honestly, and I feel like it has a very consistent sound. I love the water effects that kind of run through the whole thing. It kind of connects songs and has this like it sounds like you're listening to a water fountain. But yeah, I think it's cool, and he did a pretty great job in my opinion. So Psychedelic Porn Crumpets, what a name. These guys came out at the gates with this album swinging. Shiga the Sunlight Mound it punches you straight in the face with energy. When people mention these guys, I feel like they often get heavily compared to King Gizzard and other bands along that line, like OCs as well. But I honestly do think that they have a different sound with just the amount of pure energy they have. Because these guys, the production shines through. Like, it just hits hard. These guitars sound fat and just energetic and great. My favorite on the album is Tally Ho, which just goes through so many different phases and just cool guitar lines, and the vocals are so cool, and it just encapsulates you in this feeling, and it's great. Mundungus is another favorite on here, with it being maybe the heaviest on the album. The Closer is great. Glitterbug is really good as well. Just a really in-your-face album, but does a great job at being consistent with the energy and the feeling.
I got myself together, I got myself in check, I made myself remember.
Okay, next up we got Idols. This is a good start to all of the really good post-punk that came out this year, because my god, there's a lot of good post-punk that came out this year. Crawler is an album that really did a great job at having that awesome Idols sound, but also switching it up a little bit. Their last album was Ultra Mono, which is a great album, but it's very one note in a way. This album definitely switches it up. They tried to do a Death Grip song, and it worked. The song Car Crash is so noisy and weird, and I could just imagine MC Ride just going crazy on that. But they also have a song called The Beachland Ballroom. It has that 6/8 feel to it that really, gives it this strange kind of wandering feeling. Also, one of the most emotionally powerful songs I think they've ever written. Really great track. Probably my favorite on here. MTT 420RR is a really interesting way to open up the album. The song being mainly synth-based is a really weird turn for Idols, and I don't think that's something they've ever done. The vocals here really have a lot of power, and just they do a great job at staying emotional and just carrying this feeling. I feel like the song Crawl is just a really good Idol song, nothing more to it. This album has a lot of good things going for it, and I just got into Idols when this album came out. Right before it came out, I got into Idols and listened to Joy as an Act of Resistance and stuff like that, so hearing this now, it was a good time for it to come out. Really enjoyed it, and I think it's a very good record. We're back with King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, and this time we got Butterfly 3000. This album is so fun and cool, and I love it. Yeah, it's not the most insane, crazy thing ever, but it's just really good synth pop, rock, sort of whatever. Shanghai is probably my favorite song on here. I love how the vocal line follows the synth, but it also just has this really fun melody and feeling to it. It feels like you're literally flying with butterflies. Dreams is another really great one. The title track is great. I just love the fluttery nature to it. It's all just a really coherent and just nice experience. Also, something that I haven't seen a lot from King Gizzard in general, so it's kind of nice to see that here. Really great.
Can feel the night passing by like a mistake waiting for me.
Japanese Breakfast is back, and I love this thing. There's so much care and liveliness to this album, and I kind of fell in love with it. Be Sweet is one of the most fun songs I've heard in a while. Posing for Cars is a really beautiful and just awesome way to close the album. Tactics is really great. Posting in Bondage is awesome. Just an overall really solid album that has great production, vocals, and a feeling. Next up, we got Blue Weekend by Wolf Alice. Wolf Alice is a band I actually saw live with Queens of the Stone Age. I'm a huge Queens of the Stone Age fan, but at the time, I didn't know who Wolf Alice was, and I wish I did. This album is awesome. Really good. It's just really good indie rock, but a little bit more of an energetic and unique feel to indie rock. At least it feels like that to me. Not the whole thing is energetic, though. There's definitely some more chill songs, like How Can I Make It Okay? I think that song is awesome, really catchy. I really love the chorus and just the How can I make it okay? What I mean by energetic is probably Play the Greatest Hits. That song has so much energy and just screamy nature, and I love it. It's really something I haven't seen from Wolf Alice. Smile is a really great song. Delicious Things is one of the most catchy and memorable songs on here for me. Maybe one of the best. Maybe top 3. The Beach #2 is also a fantastic closer. Great album. I'm excited to hear more Wolf Alice in the future, and now that I know who they are, I enjoy them way more. Okay, this album is slick as fuck. Daddy's Home by St. Vincent is such a unique album, it feels like, especially when it comes to St. Vincent. I haven't heard a crazy amount of St. Vincent in the past, but from what I had heard, it does not sound anything like this. This album gives an obvious throwback to like the 60s and 70s with some styles and sound. Kind of glad it's not the 80s because that's been overdone a little bit. Don't get me wrong, I like the 80s, don't worry. But this album is really great, and I think that it uses the style not super overwhelmingly, but it also includes a lot of what's great about St. Vincent into these more classic styles. It doesn't feel like a ripoff, it feels like an expansion off of that style. Pay Your Way and Pain confused me in the beginning, but it's really cool. As soon as it came on, I was like, oh my god, these vocal lines and this groove and just everything, it's so cool. Down and Out Downtown is also a really great song that just has this feel to it and this slick kind of vibe to it, and it just, the chorus is great, the melody is great, everything about it I just really feel. The title track is also great with some really eccentric vocals. I think that's kind of a theme with this album. The vocals are very eccentric and all over the place, but I love it. The Laughing Man is a really good, quieter song, and I think that one's great. Down is also really good. But yeah, this thing is really cool, and I really appreciate its throwback sort of style, but in how much it doesn't overtake St. Vincent's normal style, if that makes sense. And it came out on top because of that.
I can feel it.
Okay, this one I'm excited to talk about. This album keeps growing on me with every single listen. Nurture by Porter Robinson is an album that I honestly kind of fell in love with. I haven't gotten into a lot of electronic music. It's a genre I haven't really just found enough to really get into. This is a great place to start, though. I just really clicked with the sound of this album, and a lot of the songs here feel super emotional and just powerful. I know that there was a struggle with Porter Robinson when making this album, going from his first album to this one. I think he was just having a lot of identity issues and just motivation issues, which is really relatable, and I think that's a lot of the lyrical stuff on this album. The first thing I really want to give credit to with this album is the production. It is insanely good, and everything just feels so lively, and just honestly, it's so impressive what he does with just the production alone. When you get into the actual songwriting, it gets even better though. The song Musician is so powerful and catchy, and just, it hits the right spot, it really does. I love the lyrics for that song, and it really feels like a reflection on what he's been going through. Wind Tempos is actually the first song I heard off of this album before even listening to the full thing, and I thought it was so amazing. It's 6 minutes, I think, and it just flies by. It feels like a transitional moment on the album, but also a really important moment on the album. Honestly, one of my favorites, and a song I come back to the most on this album, probably. Unfold is a song that I really just love, and I think that it has so much going on for it. It's so grand, and it honestly feels like the climax to the entire album. Look at the Sky is another song that kind of ties in with what he's been going through, it seems like, especially with the chorus if you read along with the lyrics. Fantastic song, another great one. It's an extremely solid album, and I honestly am so excited just to keep re-listening to it, because it has a feeling to it that I've never heard from an album before. Really, really great. Yeah, this album is the shit. Little Sims with Sometimes I Might Be Introvert. Whoa. This album is crazy. I think it's easily one of the best hip-hop albums I've ever heard. This album's been the talk of the year. It has been everywhere. Everyone's been talking about it. Everyone's like, oh, Little Sims, Sometimes You Might Be Introvert. Screw Kanye West. Screw Drake. It's Little Sims. To be fair, I haven't listened to Donda or Certified Lover Boy. Don't kill me. But this album just takes the cake with a lot of things. It feels so cohesive. Her flows on this album are so good. The production and instrumentation and the blend of genres is so awesome. The thing that immediately got me hooked with this album is the title track, kinda, because it's just Introvert. Oh my god, that song is so good. I am blown away every single time I hear that song. It really shows what Little Sims has to offer, and I think that it just does such an awesome job at, like, being so grand and just unique in so many ways. I think it's easily one of the best songs of the year. I Love You, I Hate You is also really, really good. I love the backing vocals a lot and how they kind of continue for most of the song. I love how she bounces off of them in the chorus as well. Woman is another really good track and a great follow-up to Introvert. Protect My Energy is kind of a diversion from the hip-hop style, and it just goes straight on like pop-ish. But it's kind of that indie pop sort of thing that it does that's really great. Really catchy and just really great song. I love both of the Little Key tracks a lot. I See You is also a really great one. I forgot to mention that. I get why everyone's freaking out about this album. I get why this album's talked about so much. I get the buzz around it. It's fantastic. I'm excited to keep re-listening to it and honestly just getting more into her stuff. And I want to listen to more of her albums because, damn, this thing is good. Alright, we're in the top 5 now. Shame with Drunk Tank Pink. I have been absolutely obsessed with this album recently. Like I said earlier, there's just been so much good post-punk that's come out this year, and I'm blown away by so much of it. I think some people are a little mixed on it, at least a little bit, but I don't know. I just love it. There are some songs on here that are just unreal. My favorite song on the album is Snow Day. That song has such an incredible progression, and I get goosebumps every time I listen to it. The lyrics are super dark and introspective. The ending literally, like, is so good. It is so just goosebumps everywhere. There's the backing vocals in the end just really, really make the song go from amazing to, like, perfect levels, at least for me. My second favorite is Born in Luton. Another song that just has an amazing just feeling and progression to it. And I love how it's more like fast and kind of energetic in the beginning, and then it drops out and the slow guitar comes in and everything just comes in swinging. It's just, the progression to that song is insane. I honestly don't think there are any bad songs on the album. Some more songs I like are Nigel Hitter, which is honestly a really funky and groovy song that I love. March Day is awesome, another really good one. Water in the Well. Human for a Minute slows things down a little bit, but it's still really groovy and melodically fun. Station Wagon is an awesome closer, and I love how it closes everything. Just the whole narrative and feeling to the album. It feels so appropriate. But yeah, overall, this thing is just absolutely amazing, and I honestly think it's one of the best albums of the year. It's an album I've just been listening to constantly, and I just don't really have too many problems with. I just love it. It's really great. This one was probably a bit unexpected. This is another artist that I don't really see a lot of talk about, but this is one of my favorite albums of the year. Current Joys, Nick Radigan, finally got into an actual studio and made Voyager. What I mean by actual studio is that Nick Radigan, before this album, hasn't really done that. All of his albums have been like self-recorded, but yeah, this is, I think, the best indie rock album of the year and one of my favorites for sure from the year. This album is so emotional and just well produced and really well performed and just everything. The lead single, Amateur, honestly, when I first heard it, I was like, okay, that vocal production's a little weird. Like, I don't know how to feel about it. But the more I kept listening, the more I got used to it, and now I just absolutely love the song. The follow-up single, American Honey, is way more relaxed, but it still has a beautiful, beautiful feeling to it. Oh my god. The vocals, the production, the songwriting, it feels so ear candy-ish, and I love it. The third single, Money Making Machine, is just even better. Like, it just keeps getting better with this album, at least for me. It has a more drivey, energetic nature, and the guitar line and melody and everything is just so good. And it all builds up to this ending part that's just so cool, and I love it. The song Rebecca is absolutely beautiful and way more emotional. The song Voyager Part 1 made me cry when I first heard it. Also Part 2. Part 1 is just this instrumental ballad that just has these beautiful pianos and violins. I'm such a sucker for piano ballads that really just work, and this is the definition of that to me. Part 2 is not an instrumental, it's where he actually sings, and oh my god, it couldn't be a more perfect closer for this thing. Breaking the Waves is a really great song. Calypso is really good. Yeah, I really, really love this album, and maybe it's just because I like Current Joys in general, but I really, really feel this thing. If you haven't heard Current Joys or this album, I highly recommend it, especially if you like indie rock. But yeah, it's my favorite indie rock album of the year. So let's see what the last three are.
Losing my flow and my memories are so unnatural.
Okay, now we're really getting into the stuff that has been absolutely on repeat all the time this year. Squid, Bright Green Field, another one of the many great post-punk albums that have come out this year. There's just something about it that just makes me happy. It has a good feeling, but it also is super kind of dark in a way, but also has really good production and performances and instrumentation. I don't know, it's all over the place. But what I love about it is that it's so unique. It feels really unique. Especially the vocals. The vocals are so all over the place. I feel like a lot of people consider the song Narrator to be the best song on the album. I honestly may agree with that. It's so good. The progression of the song is amazing. The amount of fun and just wacky sort of stuff that goes on in the song is amazing. The guitar licks are amazing. I don't think that they get nearly enough credit for the amount of great guitar lines that they make on this thing. I can't help but sing along to this every single time it comes on. One of my favorite songs from the year, hands down, and it's just really, really good. The song GSK is an awesome intro, and I love... It's one of the more shorter songs on this album, but I love the horn or whatever it is. I think it's this weird horn that like harmonizes with itself. I saw them play the song live, and it's only one horn player, but it's playing two notes, so I'm really interested about that. Really fun song, really great opener. The song Paddling is, I think, one of their earlier songs. I saw an interview where they were talking about it, and it's one of their earlier tracks. Still just has a great energy to it, and I love the patient in control. And then the chorus is really catchy, really great. Global Groove is an awesome track. I love how slow and just like dead it feels in the beginning. It's just... and it just feels so like demonic in a way. Then everything comes in and it gets into this really weird, funky sort of deal. And then the vocals come in and this horn comes in and it's great. It's really, really cool. 2010 is also another really great track that has a great transition from more chill to energetic. The song Pamphlets is an absolutely phenomenal closer as well. It's another 7-minute song, but it just goes through so many phases and it does a great job at serving as the closer. I'm really excited to see what else Squid does, because I really like this album, and I think the genre post-punk in general is just so much fun. Really great album, and I'm in love with it.
This is a scene on Main Street when John 50 comes to town.
Alright, second place. We are here with Black Midi. These guys are insane. Their debut is really all over the place and just smacks you in the face and just goes off in all rails. It's like a mix of post-punk, math rock, all this crazy shit. But this album, Cavalcade, is even weirder in a sense. The reason I say that is because I feel like it takes what Schlagenheim had and molds it a little bit more and takes it into a more melodic place. While Schlagenheim had a lot of brute force, just absolutely bonkers songs like BM, BM, BM and Western and just Dear DT Michigan or whatever. This album has songs like Diamond Stuff. That song is so weird, but it has this like creepy melodic nature to it. It's a great track. But that kind of feeling at least somewhat spreads throughout the entire album. But then throw all of that out the window with John L. That song is that is literally so insane. It's so weird and crazy, but I love it. I love the noise. I love the weird vocals. I love the whole I just love the weird. Such a crazy, fun, just out of the world song. It's just so weird. But as I was mentioning, the follow-up song is way more chill. Like, John L. just comes out of the gates with just you know, and then the next song is just like I'm just sitting here like, what? But I just love it. I love it. Ascending Forth is an absolutely amazing closer. Slow is one of the best songs of the year, hands down. Oh my god, that song is awesome. Hogwash and Balderdash is a more crazy side to them, but it's still really great. Yeah, this thing is really good. I mean, yeah, it takes second place, so yeah, of course it's gonna be really good. But man, Black Midi is so fun, and I just think that they're so all over the place to the point to where I love it. I don't know. They're so unique and different and just crazy, and I just love the entire thing. I love the whole package. But alright, we're on number 1. Now, this album, I have many words for it. I honestly might get its own video at some point just because I want to talk about it in more detail. But this album is actually insane, and I am in love with it. And again, it's part of that post-punk deal. Take your guesses now. It's a post-punk album. Let's see who gets it right on what the album is. Maybe leave a comment. I don't know. But yeah, my number 1 album is oh my god, the new Black Country New Road album is so good. Dude, Black Country New Road is the best band ever. Oh my fucking god. This album is so good. For the First Time by Black Country New Road is one of the most polarizing and insane albums I've heard in a while. It gets a perfect score. It gets that 10 out of 10. At least for me. The first time I heard this, I liked it for sure, and I really enjoyed it, but I didn't fully get it, and I just kept listening. I'm gonna go through each of the tracks on this thing. The first song, instrumental, starts out with these like drums, and the synth comes in, and this guitar comes in, and it has this really, really great progression, and just, it starts the album really well, and it really shows you what you're getting into. It's my least favorite song on the album, but it's still really good. It's still pretty much perfect. Then next up you got Athens, France. Now, this is the first time you hear Isaac, the vocalist. Isaac Wood, I think is his name. He has a very unique vocal style, and I feel like it's something that you kind of have to get used to, but for me it just clicked. I love his anxious rambles and his really interesting and unique lyric style. This song goes through so many phases. It goes from being really anxious to being super spacey and pretty. After that, you got Science Fair. Don't even fucking get me started on that song. The song is just, the whole song is a build-up. And oh my god, the payoff to that build-up is actually so insane. Oh my god, I'm getting so excited thinking about it. Because the whole song, it's really anxious and really creepy and weird and just rambly and just all over the place. But then at the end, it gets so insane and it builds up and builds up. And then at the end, there's just, everything drops out and it's just this nasty riff. And everything comes in. It's so intense. It's so crazy. God, it is so good. I love it. It is so crazy, so weird. And I love the payoff. The payoff is insane. And then next, we got my song of the year. It is called Sunglasses. I have no words for that song. I mean, I have a lot of words, but just in the term of me being speechless after every time I hear it, I have no words. The song lyrically blows me away, instrumentally blows me away, vocally blows me away. Everything about it I just love. The song starts with being really pretty and instrumental and like, but then the second half of the song is the best thing that's happened this year, in my opinion. It switches up and it goes to this really driving drum beat, and it's just a diminished chord for like 4 minutes, and then it comes in with this explosion, and it's just, the second half to Sunglasses gives me goosebumps even more so. Especially with that, and then everything comes in, it's just, oh my god. I don't have enough good things to say about that song. Then we got track X, which is a more chill song, which is honestly very much needed after the insanity that is Sunglasses. Way more chill, way more melodic, but still, I think is amazing and really, really well placed. Then last up you got Opus, which, oh my god, the name is fitting. Just an insane closer that goes through so many phases. This album, man, for the first time, is my album of the year. But yeah, that's it. That's my favorite. And I think it's going to be an album that stands the test of time, and this album that I'm going to be listening to for a very, very long time. But yeah, that's it. That's the video. I've been recording for 2.5 hours. I've been talking to a camera for 2.5 hours. If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to stick around. I do reactions. This isn't normally what I do, but I thought it would be a lot of fun to go out and do this. I'm really curious to see what your guys' favorite albums of the year were. And yeah, thank you so much for sticking around till the end, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.